楽しさマックスの娯楽情報番組 Go West。 旅をテーマに毎週いろいろな娯楽情報をお伝えします。今回の Go West はスピリチュアルパワースポットのセドナから約45分の田舎町プレスコットに向かいます。プレスコットはアリゾナ州の歴史が始まった町。今でもカウボーイのいるウイスキーロー、シャーロックホールやスモーカイに代表される博物館など見どころ満載です。仲良し3人娘がロサンゼルスからセドナに向かったのは2月17日朝。40番フリーウェイをまっすぐ8時間ほど走るとフラッグスタッフ。そこから南に1時間弱でスピリチュアルパワースポットとして名高いセドナに到着しました。そこからさらに今回はプレスコットに向かいます。セドナでは観光三昧で過ごした3日間。エアポートメサからの絶景、初めてのセグウェイ、そしてジープでのボルテックス探検、雪のホーリー・オブ・ザ・クロスなど思い出をたくさん作れました。アリゾナの大自然はグランドキャニオンやモニュメントバレーなどたくさんあるけど、スパとかグルメには嬉しいファインダイニングとか大自然以外の楽しみが満喫できるのもセドナの特徴かな。セドナの最後は雪景色だったのにいい感じです。プレスコットでの宿はレジデンスインプレスコット。そうです、マリオット系列の長期滞在型ホテルです。コストコやトレーダー・ジョーズ、イタリアンファミレスのオリーブガーデンも徒歩圏内。ショッピングセンターのプレスコットゲートウェイモールも目の前なので何かと便利です。今日はプレスコット市観光課のディレクターが市内の中心地を案内してくれるということで、もう今からワクワク気分です。
We're standing today on Whiskey Row. This was a very important part of our history in the late 1800s. It was a very popular location for the cowboys from all over the state to come. There used to be over 100 bars here. Now, of course, it's art galleries and restaurants and hotels, so it's changed quite a bit. And then on the other side of the street is Courthouse Plaza. In the summertime, there's festivals and events and other activities. In the wintertime, for Christmas season, we light up all these trees and have children's choirs come out and sing, and it's just it's a very magical place.
ということで、プレスコット最初の夜はアリゾナ州で最も古く、ウイスキーローの中で最も有名なサルーンを初体験です。
Welcome to the Palace. The Palace is the oldest saloon or bar in Arizona. It opened in 1877. It burned down twice over the years, once in the 1880s and then again in 1900. And during the fire of 1900, they carried this bar out across the street, and the whole thing. It was a July 14th. It was a hot night, and they knew they couldn't save the building, but they wanted to save the bar. So they took the bar across the street and they kept drinking and watched the building burn down.
Oh my God.
There were a lot of cowboys and a lot of miners in those days. Back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there used to be 40 bars on the street, 40 saloons. Every single building was a saloon. So they named it Whiskey Row. They used to have a game they played, all the miners and stuff. They'd start drinking at one end of the street and go all the way down to the end of the street and turn around. They called it turn and go on Whiskey Row. So they'd have a drink in each bar. These are all documents from the palace from the 1800s and early 1900s. This is all gambling stuff. It's all from Prescott, and most of it's from Whiskey Row. That right there, they'd have a card up their sleeve, and the card would pop into their hand, and that's right there. It's called a California holdout device. But all these pictures are all from the old days, you know.
一通り説明を受けた後は、カウボーイのコスプレがよく似合うおじちゃまたちも混じって合コンです。サルーンなんて西部劇でしか見たことがないので、実在すること自体にわかには信じがたく、140年前にタイムスリップしたような不思議な感覚にとらわれました。最後に記念撮影です。2月21日、今日はシャーロットホール博物館から。
Welcome! We're so happy to have you to Sharlot Hall Museum, the home of the Arizona History Adventure. This is where Arizona began back in the 1860s during the American Civil War. Come into the governor's mansion, where in 1864, after Abraham Lincoln had created Arizona as a political entity under the Union Army and the Union government. During the warmer part of the year, starting in around April or May all the way into October and beyond, we use this area as a living village, somewhat like Colonial Williamsburg, the famous place on the, in Virginia is. When spring comes, you can come back and help us plant our garden, and we grow vegetables and things so that the people in the buildings can actually be eating the type of food that they had at that time, because we eat hybrids and things that are very different today. The whole area here is introduced plants that people brought with them versus the plants that the Native American Indians would have found. Ultimately then it became a boarding house, and boarding houses were places where we kind of like when you're in college or something, sometimes you'd have your food sticker that you had bought to eat in the cafeteria on campus. The next person to run as a Republican was a man by the name of Abraham Lincoln. He became a little more famous. But again, we don't only talk about the famous people, we talk about the people who are the everyday people who helped establish Arizona. It wasn't that easy to do a day trip like it is for you all. You'll be going many places today in a nice, comfortable car. But you'd either have to walk, take a stagecoach like in the old John Wayne movies, be in a wagon, or late in the 1800s, you start having bicycles. Now the problem with this bicycle here is, I'm not as tall as I'd like to be. I can probably get on it and pedal, but what do you do when you want to get off?
館長のジョンさんはネイティブアメリカンのアパッチやヤバパイのことからアリゾナ州制定までの歴史を当時の生活の様子を交えて熱く語ってくれました。こちらは地元のアンティークショップ。ほとんどの商品がロサンゼルスのアンティークショップの半額以下です。
しょうちゃん見てこれ、可愛くない？可愛いね。20ドルだってしかも。可愛いこの帽子買ったの？帽子買っちゃいました。
何でも揃うショッピングモールのバッシュコートです。おしゃれなものが多いので時間がいくらあっても足りません。
あ、これ可愛いね。可愛いこれ。ここはメンズの洋服屋さんです。可愛い服屋さん見つけました。すごいガーリーなお洋服があります。高い。高いの？これいくら？可愛いこれ。
そしてランチに連れて行ってくれたのがこのショッピングモールの1階にあるこちらのお店です。
プレスコットブリューインカンパニーに来てます。
日によって異なるそうですが今日は9種類のビールが楽しめるとか。
なんかすごいいい匂いがします。ちょっと苦みがあって美味しいです。すっきりしてて飲みやすくて美味しいです。
お食事も美味しくいただきました。満足満足。こちらはハシヤンパイン。1927年開業のヒストリカルなホテルです。エレガントな赤レンガ、見事なステンドグラス。ここでちょっとティータイムというのもおしゃれですね。さて、こちらはスモーカイ博物館。
Hi, welcome to the Smoki Museum. Hi, welcome to me. Welcome. We're glad to have you here today. Do you know anything about the Smoki Museum?
Actually, we don't know nothing about
anything. Okay. All right. In 1921, a group of Prescott citizens came together to save the rodeo. Have you heard about the world's oldest rodeo here in town? It started in 1888, and by 1921, they were in financial failure. And so a group of citizens got together and decided to do something to save the rodeo, to make sure that this tradition would stay here in Prescott. And what they decided to do is they decided to do imitations of Indian dances. They did that for 2 years in a very farcical kind of manner, funny and just kind of goofing around and having a lot of fun, until 3 very important women in town came to them and said, no, these are religious ceremonies, and so if you're going to try to preserve the native ways, which we totally get and understand, you need to do it in a more reverent way. And so at that time, the Smoki, as they had started being known, started researching, started trying to understand these dances and put them on in a way that was at least authentic, and so that people that were coming to see the dances would have an accurate representation of what they were like. That tradition continued here in town until the 1990s. Up until 1990, I should say. In 1990, the Indian tribes of the United States came together and formed a protest. And by that time, the Smoki, that were really kind of a fraternal sort of organization, their numbers were dwindling and going down, so it made it more and more difficult for them to pull off these Hollywood-style recreations. And so they stopped dancing in 1990 amid a flurry of very negative publicity. And again, these decreased numbers. So the byproduct that they received by using pump drills like this on argillite was that red dust. And what they would do with that then is they would take that and mix it with bear fat or another animal fat, and they would put it on their skin, okay? Native American copper tone. That was a sunscreen.
エグゼクティブディレクターのシンシアさんは、このように最後まで熱心に説明してくれました。スモーカイ博物館から5分も走るとワトソンレイクに到着です。今日は曇っていてすっきりしないお天気だけど、自然の雄大さが感じられる素晴らしいところです。車を止めて湖畔をちょっと散策してみたいと思います。2つの博物館ではアリゾナの歴史を急に詰め込んだせいか、頭がパンパンになったので気分転換には最高ですね。私はパークレクレーションディレクターのジョー・ベインズです。ワトソンレイクは188エーカーの広大な湖で、釣りやキャンプ、そしてカヤックやボートなどで人気の場所です。ゴツゴツした丸みを帯びた岩が特徴の湖です。なんとも奇妙な異次元の世界か、他の惑星に迷い込んだような錯覚に陥りました。この変則的な岩々を見ていると、地球の景色とは思えないですね。もちろん遊泳禁止だそうです。来週はフィッペンミュージアムから。プレスコット、奥が深すぎます。来週はプレスコットパート2をお送りします。その次はスコッツデールへと続きます。アリゾナ州の旅はまだまだ終わりません。お楽しみに。